Something strange is happening in Houston, Texas, and the numbers don't lie. In the weeks following spring break, Harris County public health officials reported a staggering wave of new STD cases sweeping across the city. 42,000 new infections. HIV, gonorrhea, syphilis, herpes. The rates aren't just rising, they're exploding. But here's where things get interesting. Because according to some, this isn't just a public health crisis that got out of hand. There are people online, investigators, commentators, and insiders, who believe this outbreak didn't happen by accident. And Katt Williams? He's been pointing at the people behind it for years. So before you write this off as just another scary headline, stay with us. Because the deeper you go into this story, the less it looks like a coincidence. A recent report released by Harris County Public Health confirmed what many in the Houston area had already begun to suspect. The city carries a significantly higher rate of HIV and other sexually transmitted infections compared to the rest of Texas. Dr. David Purr, the chief medical officer for the city of Houston, sat down to address the situation directly. He acknowledged that HIV, despite being a decades-long crisis, simply doesn't receive the public attention it deserves anymore. And that silence, he warned, is part of the problem. When awareness drops, the numbers creep back up. Syphilis, gonorrhea, the cycle repeats, and the community pays the price. Now here's the reality of what those spring break numbers actually mean in practice. Roughly 3 million people flooded into Houston over that weekend. A significant number of them had unprotected sex. A significant number of those people contracted something: HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. And here's the terrifying part. Most of them don't know it yet. They went home thinking they were fine. They'll go weeks, months, maybe years without getting tested. And in that time, they'll be with 2, 3, 10 other people. And those people will be with 2, 3, 10 more. Before long, you're not talking about 42,000 infections. You're talking about a chain reaction that could touch hundreds of thousands of lives. Syphilis rates alone surged 79%. HIV is up 17%. Chlamydia and gonorrhea combined jumped 32%. The ages hit hardest? 15 to 35 years old. That's not a statistic. That's someone's kid, someone's partner, someone's future. The message here isn't about shame. It's about responsibility. You have the right to have fun. You have the right to explore. But the more active you are, the more accountable you have to be to yourself and to everyone around you. Get tested. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Check the documentation. Because right now, in the aftermath of Spring Break 2026, every casual encounter carries a risk that people are not taking seriously enough. If your partner was in Houston recently, go get tested. Don't wait. Don't assume. The one body you have is the only one you're ever going to get. But now the story takes a darker turn. Because while public health officials were pointing to population density and lack of awareness as explanations for the spike, a different conversation was happening online. Investigative voices and independent journalists began raising a question that nobody in mainstream media seemed willing to ask. What if these diseases weren't spreading naturally? What if some of these people were deliberately infected? It sounds extreme, but the claim began circulating that patients who showed up to get tested over that weekend were instead being exposed to infections on purpose. The question driving the theory was simple and pointed. Why are Black men and women disproportionately represented in these numbers? Is that a coincidence? Or is it a pattern? Katt Williams has been saying for years that the medical establishment does not have your best interests at heart. The pharmaceutical machine, he argues, is designed to keep you sick and keep you spending. They give you one medication with side effects that require another medication, and another, and another. The cure is never the goal, the profit cycle is. And when you consider the long history of documented cases where doctors were found to have infected their own patients on purpose, the theory stops sounding completely impossible and starts sounding like something worth examining. Then came the detail that made a lot of people stop and reconsider the entire timeline. Because this outbreak didn't happen in isolation. It happened at the exact same moment that the Epstein files were back in the news, and not in a good way. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, was fired by President Trump, reportedly over her handling of those files. And almost immediately after, the new Attorney General announced that the investigation into the Epstein files would be closed. No further prosecution. No new names. Case shut. And right in the middle of all of that, 42,000 people in Houston are infected with STDs over a single weekend. If you're the kind of person who believes in coincidences, maybe that doesn't bother you. But if you've been paying attention to how information gets buried in this country, the timing is hard to ignore. This is exactly the kind of distraction that Katt Williams, Joe Rogan, and Candace Owens have been describing for years. The Pentagon, it turns out, has an entire department dedicated to the film industry, a budget, a staff, and an agenda. Movies like Top Gun, Black Hawk Down, Transformers, and Apollo 13 have all been shaped with government involvement. Not because they make better movies, but because controlling the narrative is worth more than any box office number. Hollywood isn't primarily an entertainment industry. It's a messaging infrastructure. And what you watch, what you share, what you talk about, all of it is curated to keep your eyes away from what's actually happening behind the curtain. And what is happening behind the curtain? According to investigative journalist Nick Bryant, the man who first published Epstein's Black Book back in 2015, the network didn't die with Epstein. He was told by a source that there was an Epstein understudy, someone who studied the model, learned the system, and is still operating within elite circles right now. Bryant has been investigating trafficking networks for over a decade. He was named in Epstein's own emails as someone causing problems. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's a documented journalist who keeps following the thread. And the thread, he says, leads somewhere that the powers that be do not want you to go. Katt Williams understood all of this long before most people were willing to listen. He was at the parties. Or rather, he was in the parking lot. He watched the shuttle buses carry Hollywood's biggest names up into the hills for Diddy's gatherings. And 5 hours later, he watched those same powerful men come back down the mountain. Quiet, glassy-eyed, wearing Sean John, walking like something had shifted in them. Their shoelaces always untied. He never had to go inside to know what was happening. He already knew. And that's exactly why the elites who run this system are afraid of him. Harvey Weinstein tried to buy Katt's silence the same way he bought everyone else's, by offering access, money, and actresses like trading cards. Katt said no. Dave Chappelle turned down $100 million and walked away from one of the most successful shows in television history because he understood that the money was the cage, not the reward. Oprah laughed at him for it. The industry tried to paint him as mentally unstable, a drug addict, someone who threw his career away for nothing. But now, years later, it's clear that Dave saw exactly what was coming and chose freedom over control. The elites don't just buy silence. When the money doesn't work, the options get darker. Katt Williams said it plainly. When you see a rapper with a multi-million-dollar contract suddenly die out of nowhere, someone in the background just made $100 million and doesn't have to honor a single line of that deal. The artist loses everything. The label, the studio, the silent partner, they win. And the machine keeps moving. So is the Houston STD outbreak just a public health crisis that spun out of control during a chaotic spring break weekend? Maybe. That's the simple explanation, and it might be the right one. But the numbers are disturbing. The timing is strange. The Epstein investigation just got shut down. And people like Katt Williams have been warning us for years that every major story that captures the public's attention, every viral moment, every health scare, every cultural firestorm, has a function. It's there to make sure you're looking one direction while something important happens somewhere else entirely. The question you have to sit with is this: are you getting the full story, or only the version they decided you should have?